وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue in Surah Thalatha, Sunday, February 17, 2:32 p.m., 2019, which is a direct correlation with the Hijri calendar. It's currently now, where's the 11th, the 11th of Jumad al-Thani, the year 1440 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. As we return back to Surah Thalatha, as we finish the qa'idah, as it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who I worship. He's ma'budi, meaning He is my deity of worship, and I do not have a deity other than Him. And the dalil, as we talked about, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises due to Allah, Lord of the creation. وَكُلُّ مَا سِوَى اللَّهِ عَالَمٌ وَإِنَّمَا أَوْ أَنَا وَاحِدٌ مِنْ ذَلِكَ الْعَالَمِ. And everything other than Allah is called a alam. It's called a alam, not a alim, alam, بِفَتْحِ اللام, with a fatha over the lam. And I am one of the alam. I am one of the creation. We basically finished, for the most part, explaining that principle, where inshallah, bi'idhnillah, I hope it was beneficial for all of us. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial where we work in accordance to what we learn. So if you continue in the next qa'idah, if you look in your books, everyone, it says, فَإِذَا قِيلَ لَكَ بِمَا عَرَفْتَ رَبَّكَ فَقُلْ بِآيَاتِهِ وَمَخْلُوقَاتِهِ وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ اللَّيْلُ وَالنَّهَارُ وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ. He says, if it's said to you, by what do you know your Lord? By what? So you notice that he's asking in a question form. Meaning, that if it's said to you, how do you know your Lord? By what? With what? Or what is the signs? So he says, بِمَا عَرَفْتَ رَبَّكَ. As you'll find that the great Imam, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, that he organized this book in a manner as if one, of course, the Muslim is learning himself. Also, in cases of affairs that's connected with calling to Allah, meaning giving da'wah, that he also arranged it in a manner to teach the one who's a Muslim in case he's in the realm or he's in a circumstance, for example, where he's forced, or not say forced, but we will say that he wants to give da'wah or call one to Allah ta'ala or to the truth. So for one now, if he starts his da'wah or his call, of course, more than likely, then that person is going to encounter an individual who's going to ask. Because we know there are all types of people out there that have different convictions and beliefs and ideologies. And you'll find from them, from the people who say, how do you know your Lord? Meaning, how do you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists? Because there are people that more than likely you're going to encounter, they're going to have these type of questions. How do you know Allah exists? By what? What is the signs? So he said, if you look in your books, it says, فَإِذَا قِيلَ لَكَ بِمَا عَرَفْتَ رَبَّكَ. He says, then say by His signs, by His ayat, and by His creation. And from His signs is the night and the day, and the sun and the moon. We discussed last classes, we stopped and said, we said Allah, the great Imam, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, and also the words that were used in the book of Allah ta'ala, and also in the authentic sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that these words were chosen, number one, by him subhanahu wa ta'ala, to let us know that these words have indications and meanings, that they're not just used, as they say, juzafan or bila jadwa, that they're just words that were just used without any benefits of why they were used. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look in your books, it says, we know Him by his ayat. His ayat, his signs, and by his creation. And from his ayat, from those signs, as we know, ayat are just not what? They're not just verses to certain people, but no doubt the Quran, all of it are considered ayat in the book of Allah, because the Quran, all of it is a miracle from Allah. Rather, it's the greatest miracle that was given to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was the Quran. But the ayat in which you've looked in your books, you'll find that Allah, the question, it says, how do you know your Lord? It says, from his ayat, meaning from his signs. From his signs. And notice it explains, he says, and from his signs are the night and the day and the sun and the moon. So based upon what the great Imam is mentioning here, you'll notice that, like we said, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah, he explained this book in accordance to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in his glorious book, Tabaraka wa ta'ala. You'll find that Allah mentions in his book the same verse. This is a verse that's in Surah Al-A'raf. As Allah Tabaraka wa ta'ala says in his book, and other ayat, or other surah is mentioned this type of what? This type of context. You'll find where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ اللَّيْلُ وَالنَّهَارُ وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ لَا تَسْجُدُوا لِلشَّمْسِ وَلَا لِلْقَمَرِ وَاسْجُدُوا لِلَّهِ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُنْ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. There's another ayah, that one I'm going to mention, don't worry, I'm going to translate it. And there's another one where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, إِنَّ رَبَّكُمُ اللَّهُ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ يُغْشِي اللَّيْلَ النَّهَارَ يَطْلُبُهُ حَثِيثًا والشمس والقمر والنجوم والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين. So you'll find that all the verses that you'll find, or the context of how the great Imam arranged his book, it goes back to the book of Allah. So it's not like the great Imam chose these words and these fundamental principles from himself. He went back to the book of Allah and arranged it and had written all these different principles that are considered the quintessence, or if you want to say the genetics of the Muslim. He arranged it of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala arranged it in his book. Notice the verse that I just recited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ اللَّيْلُ وَالنَّهَارُ وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ. That from his signs are from al-layl wal-nahar wal-shamsu wal-qamar. Just like he mentioned in his book, the night and the day and the sun and the moon. Do not prostrate to the sun and the moon, rather prostrate to the one who created them, if you truly indeed worship him, tabaraka wa ta'ala. So, notice that if you look in your books, everyone, that it says, how do you know your Lord? So you notice in your book that the question that's being asked is based upon Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, not Uluhiyyah. Because Rububiyyah is the essence to bring the individual to know that Allah deserves to be worshipped, which is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. So, a person will utilize the Lordship of Allah in order to bring that particular individual, person, to unify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his worship. As we talked about in many classes that have preceded in the past, we mentioned this. We said that Allah ta'ala mentions Tawheed al-Rububiyyah لِأَنَّهَا تَسْتَلْزَمْ الْأُلُوهِيَّةِ. We said because we mentioned that Tawheed al-Rububiyyah necessitates uluhiyyah, as we mentioned. It necessitates uluhiyyah. So notice that he arranged this in your books, if you look, using a question that's pertaining to rububiyyah. To rububiyyah. How do you know your Lord? When you hear your Lord, one's mind should turn directly towards Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Directly. As soon as you hear Lord. As soon as you hear the word Lord, your mind should be focusing on Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Rububiyyah. Rabb. Rububiyyah. To Lordship. And we know that Allah Ta'ala is the one who has created his ayat and his makhluqat. Except the Quran, as we know, is not created. As we're going to talk about, inshallah, we're going to get the details. So it says, how do you know your Lord? Meaning by those signs that indicates his existence. As the word ayah is a derivative of the word in the Arabic language, at-ta'yi. At-ta'yi. I don't want to get too deep into this. But at any rate, the word at-ta'yi or ta'yi or ta'yi in the Arabic language, it means a tathabbut wal iqamatu ala shay. It means a tathabbut, means something that's affirmed, something that's well established, and it's also utilized to establish something, or to be an indication for something. So that's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his book chose the word ayat. Because they all what? They affirm something. And they lay down something that's well established. And it's also establishing the existence of something. That's the reason why everything we mentioned are called ayat. Ayat. Because they indicate what? The existence of Allah. That's why the sun is called ayah. That's why the moon is called a ayah. That's why the day is called a ayah. That's why the night is called a ayah. Because they indicate all, what everyone? The existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all manifest. They're manifest signs that indicate something. And like we said, that something is the existence of Allah wa ta'ala. If you look in your books, it also says al-makhluqat. Al-makhluqat. Al-makhluqat, for those, of course, we know they have some background of the Arabic language. They have some knowledge of the Arabic language. If you look in your books, it says makhluqat. So we just now extracted the meaning of ayat. The meaning of ayat. Now, if you look in your books, it says makhluqat. Makhluqat. As makhluqat is something that Allah brought into existence in a manner or in a way that is unprecedented. It is unprecedented. That's the meaning of makhluqat. That which Allah brought into existence in a manner that is unprecedented. عَلَى مِثَالٍ لَمْ يُسْبَقْ إِلَيْهِ. In a manner or in a way that's unprecedented. It is unprecedented. That Allah originated it and brought it into existence. He's the mubdi'. He's the what? Al-badi'. Badi' meaning he's the one that originated it. For verily, if a person that he sees these signs, that he sees these makhluqat, I'm sorry everyone, if he sees these makhluqat, the first thing that will come to the mind of the individual, who is the one that created it and who's the one that brought it into existence? Of course, then the answer would be Allah, ta'ala, no doubt. For based upon what we're mentioning now, there are methods of knowing Allah, and there's numerous ways, and they're various, and they're also diverse. There are various types, and they're also diverse of knowing or having knowledge of Allah, and how the human being is in dire need to have knowledge of his Lord and the knowledge of his Creator. There's a profound statement by the great Imam, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, that he put in his book called Dar al-Ta'arud. Dar al-Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql. There's a tremendous treatise that he authored, rahimahullah. It's called Dar al-Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql. Dar al-Ta'arud basically means, or the title of the book, means rejecting the notion, or removing the notion, that the intellect was made to oppose the revelation. That the intellect or the mind was created to oppose the revelation. That was the title of the book. Tremendous book. But basically, Shaykh al-Islam, his intent when he wrote that book was to manifest and bring evidences and proofs to establish that the human mind or the intellect was made to submit to the revelation, not to oppose it. And that the mind was not made to be the judge over the revelation. Rather, the revelation was made to judge over the mind and to direct it and point it in its right direction. And not to be utilized in a manner that's inappropriate, whereas it would cause corruption, where the human being will come as a result of it conducting like an animal or worse. But anyway, the name of the title is Darat Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql, removing or rejecting the notion that the human mind and intellect came to oppose the revelation. Rather, he brought, like we said, evidences and proofs to show how the mind was made to submit to the revelation, and that the revelation was sent down so the human mind can be conducted in the proper manner, and that the human mind will be utilized in the proper way. And he wrote that treatise in order to refute all the deviant sects that made the human mind and intellect glorified to the point where they gave precedence to that over the revelation. So Shaykh al-Islam wrote this book as a rebuttal and a refutation against them. As a rebuttal and a refutation against them. So notice Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah's book was a refutation. In contrast to what some believe, you'll find that the majority of the mu'allafat, of the treaties that the great Imam wrote, are all rebuttals and refutations against the people of falsehood. طيب. So what is my point in mentioning this? He said in that tremendous treatise that he wrote, in that tremendous, profound, tremendous work that he did and he authored, he said this statement. He said, وَكُلَّمَا كَانَتْ حَاجَةُ النَّاسِ إِلَى مَعْرِفَةِ الشَّيْءِ وَذِكْرِهِ أشد وأكثر كانت معرفتهم به وذكرهم له أعظم وأكثر وكانت طرق معرفته أكثر وأظهر وكانت الأسماء المعرفة له أكثر وكانت على معانيه أدل. This is what he says in Darat Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql. He says, every time the people that they are in dire need of having knowledge of a thing and mentioning it and knowing about it, that it becomes more intensified and more important. Then know for sure, he says, that having knowledge of it, of them attaining knowledge of that thing and mentioning that thing, that is on a higher level and is the greatest of all things. وَكَانَتْ طُرُقُ مَعْرِفَتِهِ أَكْثَرُ وَأَظْهَرُ. So, not only having knowledge of that thing is important, and like we said, when the people are in dire need of that thing, what is he talking about here? Shaykh al-Islam. He's saying that the only way that people will be able to survive, whereas they won't cause corruption, where it's going to have them in a manner that conducts properly and correctly, of course, where they're going to be upright, where they're in dire need of that thing. So having knowledge of that thing is tremendous. It's on a great level. Then also likewise, to have the steps and the methods and the manners of how to attain the knowledge of that thing also is great. So now, knowing the ways and the methods of that particular thing and attaining it is of the utmost importance. Because they are the ways that indicate that thing. And he's talking about Allah, of course. He said, for that reason, وَلَمَّا كَانَتْ حَاجَةُ النُّفُوسِ إِلَى مَعْرِفَةِ رَبِّهَا أَعْظَمَ الْحَاجَاتِ كَانَتْ طُرُقُ مَعْرِفَتِهِمْ لَهُ أَعْظَمُ مِنْ طُرُقِ مَعْرِفَةِ مَا سِوَى. He says you'll find that the nufus, that the people, of course, he said for that reason you'll find that the need of the people to know about their Lord is the most greatest, the greatest of needs. He says the greatest of hajat. He says the greatest of needs. He says just as likewise the knowledge of the methods of knowing him likewise is the greatest. So not just knowing, basically it's just to sum it up and make everything concise and straight to the point. He's saying that we are in dire need to know our Lord. He's in the most dire need in order to what? To know our Lord. He says, not only that, but also to know the method of how to know our Lord is also the greatest ways to what? To attain that knowledge of our Lord. We have to find the methods and the ways. He says it's greater than the methods and the ways of attaining knowledge which is of other than him. Basically, he's saying, not only the people are in dire need of Allah and knowing who he is and having the knowledge of that, but knowing the methods of how to attain and reach that goal is also what is the most needed and the most greatest of knowing how to have knowledge of Allah, to learn not only about Allah, but also the methods of how to know Allah, both. So not just having knowledge of Allah, but also knowing the methods of how to know Allah. فَلِهَذَا جَادَ اللَّهُ بِطُرُقِهِ. And that's the reason why you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah emphasized, and he put in his book, and he put in so many different verses in his book, the different ways of how to know him. You'll find in the Quran there's so many verses where Allah has put ayat and verses of teaching us the signs of how to know him. So not just knowing Allah and that's it, but Allah also taught us the method of how to know him and the ways to how to know him. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, sisters? Everyone with me? It says, فَلِهَذَا جَادَ اللَّهُ بِطُرُقِ مَعْرِفَتِهِ عَلَى عِبَادِهِ جُودًا عَامًا مُيَسَّرًا. That's the reason why you'll find that Allah, tabarak wa ta'ala, in so many different verses, explains the methods and the ways of knowing him and indicating him and teaching that to his servants. And he did it in a manner that was excellent, general, and also made easy and facilitated for anyone to what? Understand. Whether they be a person that's on a high educated level or a person that's other than that. Because we know that everything is a sign and an indication for Allah's existence. And that's due to the poet as he says in his poetry, that he says, Ya ajaba, or ya ajaba kayfa yu'sal ilahu, wa kayfa yajhaduhu al-jahidu, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ آيَةٌ تَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ وَاحِدٌ. That he says in his poetry. So the poet says in his poetry, he says, فَوَا عَجَبَ كَيْفَ يُعْصَى الْإِلَهُ وَكَيْفَ يَجْحَدُهُ الْجَاحِدُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ آيَةٌ تَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ وَاحِدٌ. He says, how amazing it is, how can Allah be disobeyed? The only one that deserves to be worshipped, how he's disobeyed. Just keep listening, it says in the last part of the poetry. فَكَيْفَ يَجْحَدُهُ الْجَاحِدُ. He says, how can those who deny his existence deny him? فِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ آيَةٌ تَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ وَاحِدٌ. He said that everything that is in this existence is an indication that he is the one deity deserving of worship. وَدَلَائِلُ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ مِنْ حَيْثُ الظُّهُورِ وَعَدَمِهِ قِسْمَانِ. So now I wanted to say to everyone that the indications of Allah's lordship, whereas they manifest, or does it manifest, the indications of Allah's rububiyyah breaks down to two categories. The indications of Allah's rububiyyah breaks down to two categories. The first one is one that is manifest and clear for everyone to see. قسم ظاهر بين لكل أحد مثل السماوات والأرض والسحاب ونزول الأمطار. For example, the first category which is manifest and clear for everyone to see, that everyone sees. For example, the sun the earth, the clouds, the descension of rain, and anything similar to that. The heavens, the earth, the clouds, the descension of rain. Everyone sees that, right, everyone? Every human being sees that. And everyone sees how everything has been what? Has been made systematic, clearly. There's a sun during the day. There's a moon during the night. There's a descension of rain from the heavens to give what? To give nutrients to the crops and to the food and to give life to the what? To the earth, so the people can what? So their existence can continue on this earth. This was all systematic. You see that there was a what? Architect. And there was a what? Creator. The sun during the day, the moon during the night, and like we said, the clouds that were made, and the descension of rain as sustenance. All this is what? Made clear for everyone to see. The second one, or the second category, is what they call mukhtas. It's yakhtas bihi al-mukhtasun. A category that's what? Specific. It's specific and it's particularized by certain people that what? Acknowledge it and that see it. That category that's particularized or exclusive. That they're very, very daqiq, meaning they're very in a manner that's very accurate, but those who have knowledge can detect it. Those who have been given proper knowledge can what? Acknowledge it and see it. So they're only particularized by certain people, that they only know that. And they're the people who have the correct knowledge. Meaning, for example, the predetermination of what people see as far as the planets and the stars and their movements in certain ways. For those planets and stars, when they're moved in certain ways, as we know, they've been put in the sky, and there's certain people that are able to what? Know times and know distances and know directions, and they have specific knowledge of that. But they're able to see that all these stars, that they move in a certain way, in a certain pattern. And they come back as a result of it and return back to what they were what? After they have moved in that pattern, they go back to what? And start over again. For those people who have knowledge of the of the stars and how they move, and they can detect when certain times, and there's certain seasons or certain distances, certain directions, and they see this and how they utilize in this manner. These are all indications of the rububiyyah of Allah. So number one, if you want to say the first category is manifest for everyone to see. And number two is only for what? A specific people that they can notice if they have the knowledge of it. But just to summarize everything, the rububiyyah of Allah, the signs of the rububiyyah and existence of Allah are too many to be counted. These are just small, minute examples. These are not just to restrict them to these two categories. Brothers and sisters, the rububiyyah of Allah and the signs of it are too many. They're too many. In the human body and how it functions, it's systematic. To the point where even scientists are starting to come to the conclusion there's no way that the human body, of how it was systematically put in everything in its proper place so it can function in the manner it does, except that there had to be an architect. There had to be a creator. There's no way. Everything in the human body is another ayah. It's another sign and it's another indication for the rububiyyah of Allah. And these are the type of evidences and proofs that you utilize when you encounter an individual that needs to be called to the truth. You say, look to the sun during the day. Look to the moon during the night. Look to when it rains, so give us sustenance. Look to the human body, the eyes so you can see, the nose so you can breathe, the tongue so you can breathe in air, the tongue so you can communicate, your 2 legs so you can walk from one point A to point B, your fingers so you can grab, your lungs so you can breathe, your back so you can what? Sit up and do upright and do vigorous movements. The man has been made for what? For work. And the woman has been made to reproduce. All this was systematic. There was an architect. There's no way in the world that a person can say all this just fell out the sky out of nowhere. That it does not absolutely make any sense. No, this systematic of what we see in all these different signs is no way, it's impossible to what? Deny that there was a creator and there was an architect for this. Eyes so it can see, nose so it can breathe, ears so it can hear, tongue so it can eat, a tongue so it can taste, so it can breathe, so it can communicate, so it can talk, so it can speak, so it can convey what it needs, so it can talk and interact, so we can have languages and people communicate. Arms and muscles so it can lift, so it can push, so it can what? All these things is all indications and signs of Allah's existence. No one can deny that. It's impossible. So that's the reason why you'll find that the question of an individual will say, prove to me that Allah exists. That shows the severe ignorance and the height and the decadence of what? Of ignorance of this question. Rather, it's the opposite. The opposite is, there's too many signs to indicate that Allah exists. You need to prove that Allah doesn't exist. That's more of a befitting question, and you can't. The befitting question is to prove that Allah doesn't exist because there's too many signs that shows He does exist. It's too many. That's more of a so-called befitting question, and at the end of the day, you can't. You can't. Trust me. I don't care what the philosophers bring. Shaykh al-Islam refuted every concept they brought, and he demolished it. When he refuted logic and we refuted philosophy, if you look in his books, he destroyed them, proving that Allah does exist, until they even had to submit to his arguments and proofs. And he even brought in his book saying that this is more, for you to say that prove to me Allah exists, that question is not befitting. He said because there's too many proofs and evidences that Allah exists. It's too many. He said rather what's befitting is the opposite. You have to prove, the question is against you. You prove that Allah doesn't exist. And you can't. So just as far as the rububiyyah of Allah Ta'ala, he says al-ayat, of course we know all the signs that indicates his lordship are too many to be mentioned. Too many. But if you want to break it down in those 3 categories of and pertaining of what the signs that indicate his rububiyyah, we said that we mentioned the first 2 categories. One, that everyone manifests, that's everyone sees, no matter what they have knowledge or not. And then you have the second category of those who are particularized with knowledge or possessing some type of knowledge. But however, to add on to those 2 categories, to show the evidences and the indications of the rububiyyah of Allah, for verily Allah Ta'ala gives us different methods of how to know Him. From these methods is number 1 is in the Kitab and Sunnah. If you want to call it al-adillatu ash-shar'iyyah. Al-adillatu ash-shar'iyyah. The evidences and proofs that have been what? That are shar'iyyah. That are shar'iyyah. That are in the Kitab and Sunnah. For the adillah or the evidences that's in Kitab and Sunnah also likewise breaks down to 3 categories. For the signs or the evidences and proofs of Allah's existence in His rububiyyah, it's the first category is called al-adillat al-shar'iyyah, the evidences and proofs that are in the Kitab and Sunnah, and they are of three categories. They comprise of three categories. The first category is what they call sam'i. 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 So everybody put their pens down, their pencils down for 1 minute, just to understand this. And then we'll move on to the next point. First one is called sam'i. Sam'i. Sin, mim, ayn, ya, nisba. What is sam'i? Person would say, it just means hearing. Just listen. وهو ما دل على ربوبية الله بمجرد الإخبار عن الله وأسمائه وصفاته كما في كثير من الآيات وآيات القرآن الكريم. What is the meaning of sam'i? Sam'i is what indicates the rububiyyah of Allah by what Allah informed about Himself and His names and His attributes. And a lot of the ayats that are in the Quran. So just listen. So there's not any prophets. The Messenger of Allah he even mentioned this. He said in alayhi salatu wasalam that is not the prophets or any prophet from the prophets there were. He said except that they were given ayat. They were given signs. Similar of what would be given in order for mankind to believe what they were upon of the truth. So listen what the Messenger of Allah went on to say. He says, however, وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ الَّذِي أُوتِيتُهُ وَحْيًا أَوْحَاهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. He says, however, he says, of what? For verily, most definitely, of what I was given, meaning of those signs, what I was given, which was revelation, in which Allah revealed to me. And I hope that as a result of it, I will have the majority of the followers on the day of resurrection. So basically, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ in this hadith was talking about from the signs that are sim'i in Kitab and Sunnah was the Quran, of course, which was the Quran. As we know, the Quran, and also likewise the authentic Sunnah, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is also considered the signs of Allah, no doubt. For number one, of what? How is it a sign of Allah? Because of its preservation. That's number one. Its preservation of it being tampered with or altered or distorted. Either in its words or in its understanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected that final revelation from all the different various types of influences or events that have occurred with the previous nations. As we know, all the previous revelations that Allah sent down to the Jews and the Christians, all of them have been tampered with, all of them have been altered and changed and distorted. However, the last final revelation, like we said, necessitates that it has to be protected and maintained. That it has to be protected from distortion and change, and that it be tampered with. So the Messenger of Allah said that the sign that he was given, it was what, everyone? So the first category, which is called sam'i, meaning of what indicates Allah's rububiyyah from what Allah informed of Himself and His names and His attributes. That is in the book of Allah. And the Messenger of Allah was given this as a sign, which is the Quran, as we know, is an ayah, no doubt. As we know, the book of Allah was given as a sign of the rububiyyah of Allah. So keep in mind, brothers and sisters, that what? That the Quran itself is an indication of the rububiyyah of Allah. Due to its preservation, due to it being protected from distortion and alterations, and likewise its understanding being preserved. And for anyone to read how complete the religion of Islam is, are all signs of the rububiyyah of Allah. If a person reads the Quran with the proper understanding of attaining the proper tafsir and the proper commentary, and he studies the Kitab and Sunnah and showing how detailed it is and how expansive and how comprehensive it is, of rectifying every aspect of society, of every single thing of animals, as far as politics or how to govern or how to run a country. There's ayat and there's ahadith for that. How to even socially treat, first of all, number one, at the head of all that, the rights of their Lord, and giving the creation knowledge of Allah and their Lord. That's the most what? That's the essential thing. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look in all the Quran and Sunnah, you'll find the different details of how to run a country. There's ayat for that, and there's also ahadith for that. How to treat your wife, how to treat your husband, how to treat your children, how to even have business transactions. All these things are signs to indicate Allah's existence, to say that this is an architect. There's no way in shape, form, or fashion of all these details that have been given us in every aspect that was sent down, that except there was an architect that sent this down perfectly and systematically. And if the people ponder on it, they will know that it was a sign of the indication of the existence of Allah. So the preservation of the Quran, as we know that it's still preserved. And it's what? It being maintained and protected from alterations and distortions. And also the authentic Sunnah being preserved and protected from distortions. And also the understanding is still to this day intact, and it's still preserved, and it's still being protected. And to add on to that, to look at every single aspect of life, that there's a what? There's some type of revelation that's taught in order to what? Conducting it properly. Of what will be beneficial, of attaining our Lord's pleasure, and also rectification to the societies and the people. You'll find that it's mentioned all in the book of Allah and the Sunnah, the message of Allah, like we said, everything you can think of. How to treat animals. How to also treat the creation as far as trees. Because we know there are ayat and ahadith that in certain instances you're not supposed to what? In certain lands, of course, you're not supposed to cut down certain trees in certain ways, in certain animals, in certain insects. You'll find there's a hadith for it, of how to treat ants, how to treat animals. Also, how to go to the bathroom, how to put your clothes on, how to go in your car, how to treat your wife, how to treat your children, how to even conduct in business, of how to give your rich and that which to give to the poor and to the impoverished, and how to treat them, and how to treat and interact with people socially on a daily basis. All these are indications of what? The rububiyyah of Allah, as far as the category, what they call, brothers and sisters, sam'i, meaning in the Kitab and Sunnah. That first category is also an indication of the existence of Allah. Because you will see, if you study Kitab and Sunnah, it's very what? Systematic and comprehensive. That this was no way made by a man. No one could have made this. This was an architect. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. No, I'm cool. I'm good. Jazakallah khairah. Shahada Muhammad Rasul. Shahada Muhammad Rasul. حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعدته. So the first category of knowing the rububiyyah of Allah, like we said, which complements those two categories we just mentioned, we said the first category is called sim'i. Sim'i, right everyone? So those are which come, or those signs that come in the Kitab and Sunnah, in which Allah, like we said, informed about Himself, His name and His attributes, which is in a lot of ayats in the Book of Allah. And also the Sunnah, the message of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, is also from those indications of the rububiyyah of Allah. Also, a person might say, what's the indication of which comes in Kitab al-Sunnah. We said the first category is Sim'i, right everyone? Sim'i. You have the second category, which is called Aqli. Aqli. Those signs which is in Kitab al-Sunnah, where the intellect is utilized. But however, it's been put in its proper place as far as its utilization. The second category in that also, which comes in Kitab and Sunnah, is the aql. It is the intellect. A person will say, where'd you get that from? Because Allah does say in His book for us to utilize our intellects to reflect on His signs. He does say that. To use your intellect, but use it in its proper place. And use it to reflect on His signs, to think about it. So the second category is called aqli, intellect, or intellectual, or what is utilized by the human mind. A person and the human mind also is an indication for the rububiyyah of Allah. The intellect is an indication for the rububiyyah of Allah, because Allah did not just create us with everything we need to be, if you want to say, for self-sustainable as far as how we function. Allah also gave us an understanding and an intellect to comprehend, because that's essential in how to involve and interact with people. You have to have some type of understanding. You have to have some type of comprehension. And we see the ways of what would cause if a person had that removed by seeing people who are what? Who are mentally challenged. So you see that ni'mah of Allah, of intellect, is a ni'mah. And those who has it been removed, you see how they conduct. So you can reflect on those who don't have it, and you can reflect that Allah gave you another what? Blessing. Because those who are mentally challenged, you see that they have not been given that proper what? Intellect. And they cannot conduct in a manner that will what? Truly benefit society. So aqli, a person would say, what is the what? What is the evidences and proofs for aqli in the Kitab and Sunnah? Based upon the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون أم خلقوا السماوات والأرض بل لا يوقنون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, use your intellect here. He says it, use your mind. Where He says in His book, was they not created from something? Meaning, didn't someone create them? Or are they themselves the creators? Did they create the heavens and the earth? Rather, they have no surety. Right? But you'll find in Surah At-Tur, ayah number 35, Allah is establishing the evidences using the intellect. He's saying, Hal wujidu min ghayri mujid? He's saying to the creation, use your mind now. Have you been originated and brought to existence without an originator? Without someone that brought you into existence? Allah is telling you, use your mind, use your intellect. Was you not brought into existence from a person that didn't bring it from a min ghayri mujid? Was you not created and brought into, from non-existence into existence by a mujid, by the one who's the originator and the one who brought you into existence? Or did they themselves create themselves? Or they brought themselves into existence? And if you know that, and it becomes rhetorical. If it become clear that it's not that nor that, then it's obligatory that you have to affirm and acknowledge the Creator, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the evidences and proofs that are in Kitab al-Sunnah, is the aql. It is the intellect. You'll find that there's a lot of verses that Allah tells us to utilize our intellect to reflect on certain things. Whether it be in ourselves, whether it be in the creation, or whether it be in His Kitab and Sunnah. That the intellect and the human mind, that Allah tells us to utilize it, to reflect on His signs, to know of His existence. So that's the second category. He called it then. He called it. So you have the second category, which is called what, everyone? Aqli. Aqli. The third category, which comes in Kitab and Sunnah, is what they call hissi. Hissi. That which is attained by the senses. It's attained by the senses. That which is attained by the senses. Meaning of when those who call on Allah, of course, that He answers their invocations or their supplications. And He gives help and relief to those who's in a state of adversity and facing severe difficulties at that particular time. Those severe straits or those dire straits or those what? Those circumstances. So what do we mean by hissi? What is the dalil on kitab al-sunnah? Hissi is what is attained by the senses. Firstly, number one, it comes of what happened during the time of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam. That happened during his time. Of things that took place that was an indication of Allah's existence. So keep in mind, brothers and sisters, not only did they call it miracles or mu'jizat, miracles of the prophets. A lot of people think the miracles of the prophets were only just to confirm the messengership or the true reality or the affair that they truly were messengers and prophets sent to humanity. That's not just it. No doubt, that's part of it. But there's something more major behind that. Some people are what? Unaware of. I'll say it again. The prophets and the messengers, they were given what? Mu'jizat. Even though the word mu'jizat is inappropriate. Rather, when we say miracles, it's more appropriate that you use the word ayat. Ayat, as the great Sheikh Muhammad Aman al-Jami that he mentioned. He said mu'jizat was initially a logical term that was brought by the philosophers. He says more befitting that you say ayat. Miracles are called ayat. The miracles of the prophets in the Arabic language should be called ayat, not mu'jizat. They're called ayat. But at any rate, the ayat that the prophets and the messages were given was in order to what? Confirm the veracity and the truthfulness of their messengership and their prophethood. Right or wrong? They were given those ayats to confirm that they truly were prophets and messengers. That's why they were given them. So the people see it, and they affirm that this individual is truly what? A prophet and messenger. However, there's something beyond that. Of those miracles. There's something that's greater than that. What is that, everyone? The existence of Allah ta'ala in His rububiyyah. The miracles were given to the messengers and prophets, number one, to indicate the existence of Allah and His what? In His lordship. So it doesn't just to confirm the veracity or the truthfulness of the prophets and messengers. And that's it. It was something greater than that. It indicated of Allah's existence and Allah's lordship. And also what we're going to discuss, inshallah, from His signs was what was given the prophets and messengers of the great examples that they set for humanity. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, we'll start with for example, the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. That the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was given the best character, the best of what? Etiquette, and the best of behavior. As a sign from Allah that He sent His messenger and prophet as an example, and that was supposed to be that was also a sign to reflect His good character, His good mannerism, His good treatment. His uprightness was all considered signs. And then Allah Ta'ala also gave him to confirm that, which was those ayat, which was those miracles that Allah Prophet was given as another indication of Allah's rububiyyah and Allah Ta'ala's what? Existence. For example, we have too many to be counted and enumerated in this regard. But we can use one hadith. When the Messenger of Allah, as we know, that during his time on the hadith of Anas, and this is also hissi. This is in the third category. We didn't leave out the third category, which is called hissi, which is attained and acknowledged by the senses. In the hadith of Anas ibn Malik, that it says that the Messenger of Allah was given the khutbah, as we know. فاستقبل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قائما فقال يا رسول الله هلكت المواشي وانقطعت السبل فادعوا الله يغيثنا قال فرفع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يديه فقال اللهم اسقنا اللهم اسقنا اللهم اسقنا قال أنس لا والله ما نرى في السماء من سحاب ولا قزعة ولا شيئا وما بيننا وبين سلع من بيت ولا دار قال فطلعت من ورائه سحابة مثل الترس فلما توسطت السماء انتشرت ثم أمطرت قال فوالله ما رأينا الشمس سبتا يعني أسبوعا كاملا ثم دخل رجل من ذلك الباب في الجمعة ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قائم يخطب to the end of the hadith. So the third category, we still sticking to what was called hissi. He said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was on the minbar giving a khutbah on Jumu'ah. He said then the Messenger of Allah was facing the people standing up. And there was an individual and a man that came in, he said, Messenger of Allah, all the mawashi. He said that all the animals have died. And all the what? All the different rows, or if you want to say the crops have been destroyed. He says, invoke Allah to give us relief. فَدْعُ اللَّهَ يُغِيثُنَا. Give us that relief. So the Messenger of Allah raised his hands. And he said, Oh Allah, let it rain. Oh Allah, let it rain. Oh Allah, let it rain. Or send us that saqi, meaning that sustenance that will give us that what? That rain. Anas ibn Malik was there. He said, I swear by Allah, there was nothing in the heavens. There was nothing there. He said there was not one cloud in the sky. He said it was not one cloud in the sky. There wasn't anything there. He says in between us and a different Sila' min Bayt, from the mountain that was around it, of Jabal Sila', of a house, there was that mountain was called Jabal Sila'. He's talking about the mountain that's called Jabal Sila'. That's in Medina. But anyway, he said you'll find around the mountain of any house or any dwelling place, anything, anywhere, he's trying to say. To let you know how clear the sky was. To put emphasis on what? How clear that miracle was. And he said that everyone was there and he saw it. He said when the Messenger of Allah said, or did that invocation, he said would manifest from behind the mountain was a what? A bundle of clouds, and a group of clouds. He said similar to a turs. He said like something of that was just a shield or in that circular what? Shape or what have you. He says, فَلَمَّا تَوَسَّطَتِ السَّمَاءِ انتشرت. He said when that one little cloud had came in the middle, it stopped in the middle of the heavens and it started to spread out. He says all of a sudden it started to what? Started to rain and come down in abundance. He says during that time when the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said that, he said, I swear by Allah, we didn't see the sun for a week straight because it was raining so much. From that time when the Messenger of Allah made that supplication up to the next week. He says, until another man came from another door in Jumu'ah to the next Jumu'ah. And the Messenger of Allah was standing. Oh, what time? 3:14. Oh, someone's. I gotta stop. That the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm about to stop now. That the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was standing up and giving the khutbah in the next week again, and he was facing the people, he said the exact same thing. As a result of so much rain, he said now that was a cause of what? That the crops and all the merchandise and things are now starting to be what? Messed up and started to be destroyed. Also Allah now invoke Allah to stop it. The Messenger of Allah raised his hands. He said, Oh Allah, make the rain go around us, not upon us. He said, Wala Allahumma ala al-akami wal-dhirab wal-awdiyah wa manabit al-shajar. To the end of it. He says, Oh Allah, around us, upon ala al-akam wa ala al-dhirab, upon the different sides of the fields where the location was around them, upon the valleys and the places where the trees grew. He says, then it stopped. It says until we left out, he says, and the sun was what? Was present. Now we could see the sun and we were walking right underneath the sun. The point of the matter is to show that the adillah of Kitab and Sunnah was that which was fathomed by what? That which was fathomed, was recognized and acknowledged by the senses, what the people seen with their eyes, what they seen with their senses, what they heard and what they seen with their eyes, which is from the senses of the human being. And what the people had seen. Because we know that the Sahaba were the most truth, the truth of creation after all the prophets and messengers. And you have so many different scenarios where they seen certain things that were what? That were indications of Allah's existence and His signs. Too many. And that's the reason why you'll find that a lot of the ulama of the past and of today have written treaties of what they call the indication of what they call the nubuwat, or the signs of prophethood. And you'll find that they mention a lot of the what? The miracles of the prophets, especially the Prophet ﷺ. And he had a lot of them. A lot of them. And the greatest of them, like we said, was the Quran. And other than that, from what? From the moon splitting. The moon split it into two. And what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was given of certain things in regards to what took place. I brought some of the miracles of the prophets, certain things you probably never even heard of certain asanid. During the time with the Messenger of Allah, I'm sure people have heard the miracles of the rocks, of course, speaking, and also the jid' al-nakhl, the date palm moaning. That was just some of them. There's others. And people hearing the tasbih of the food in the hands of the people, that's just some. There was also animals talking during this time. I'll bring the ahadith. There's authentic ahadith explaining that. But the Messenger of Allah during his time, there was animals speaking. There was animals talking. And that also the Messenger of Allah also knew that one of the people who was keeping his crops, that he was abusing a certain animal. He put his ear to the animal, and it whispered something in his ear. And he told the individual what she was doing to it to mistreat it. And he told him. And the man was in belief because that's exactly what he was doing. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ knew what Palestine, and he gave them different types of what? Explain in detail what the land looked like. Also likewise, when the people say that the Messenger of Allah, when the moon split, they thought he was a liar and they did magic on him. They thought he did magic on their eyes. Until the people said, if he's a liar and he's a person that's a magician, he pulled something over our eyes, let's ask the travelers. They said they asked the travelers, and the travelers also confirmed it. The people who are outside traveling in the remote distance places also saw the moon split. So it wasn't magic. It was something that actually occurred. Also, likewise, you'll find, as Ibn Kathir mentioned in his Bidayah wa Nihaya, that he mentioned a set of benefit. He said that in certain countries, and I think it was in Hind and Pakistan, I got to find it, Ibn Kathir, because it was a long time. He said that they have in their history books that they said they wrote a date because they had, because they were practicing paganism, but they said that the reason why they did that particular ritual of paganism because it was on a particular night where they saw the moon split, and they were in a whole other country and land, and they wrote it that it was a time in history, and I think it still exists to this day. I gotta find it. That they also seen, the non-Muslims seen that the moon had what? Split into two. So it wasn't magic that the Messenger of Allah just did in front of the people who was around him. It was something that was what? Generalized. Everyone saw it. The travelers saw it. The people in other countries and lands saw it. All of that is an indication for what? That was hissi. Something that was acknowledged by the senses of indication to rububiyyah of Allah and His existence. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? So you have number one, sam'i, number two, aqli, and number three, what they call hissi. And all of that is in Kitab al-Sunnah. We'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Any questions about the lesson? Hold on, let me just